I want to start with a simple question, one that might make you stop for a moment and think, have you ever felt like you had to try so hard just to be accepted by someone? Maybe at work, maybe in your family, maybe even in the relationships you thought were the safest. I've met hundreds of people over more than 30 years of working with folks in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, and almost everyone carries a quiet fear. If I'm no longer the person they want me to be, will I still be loved? I remember a woman named Martha, 63, who came to see me one afternoon. She said, "All my life I tried to please everyone. I was the good daughter, the good wife, the good mother. But now my children are grown and my husband has passed, and I realize I don't know who I am anymore." Have you ever felt like Martha, as if your whole life were a play, and when the curtain finally fell, you discovered you never really got to live as yourself? I looked at Martha and told her something I learned far too late in my own life. We don't need approval to exist. We exist, and that's already enough. Let that sink in. Because when you've crossed the halfway point of life, when the hair silvers and the dreams of youth have folded, what remains isn't applause. It's the quiet of your own heart. When I was younger, I craved recognition. I wanted to be the best in my field, to speak in grand halls, to see my name printed in philosophy journals. And for a few years I did. Strangely, the more praise I received, the emptier I felt. I remember one evening after a talk where the audience stood and clapped for minutes. I walked off stage, sat alone in the dressing room, and looked into the mirror. I didn't recognize the man staring back. He knew how to say profound things, but he didn't know who he really was. That's when I realized approval is a kind of addiction. The more you get, the more you need. And when it goes quiet, you start to wonder if you're worth anything at all. Many people my age or older know that fatigue. You've lived your life meeting expectations, parents, spouse, children, society. You've tried to be appropriate, reliable, good. But somewhere along the way, you lost something precious, your own truth. Imagine this. You're standing in a crowded room where everyone is talking at once. Each person has an opinion about you. This one says, live like this. That one says, be different, be better. You spin around trying to answer them all until you can no longer hear your own voice. Then one day you're so tired you just sit down and close your eyes. If you're quiet long enough, something lovely happens. You begin to hear the real voice within. It isn't loud. It doesn't push. It simply whispers, "My dear, being yourself is enough." I know, easy to say. Letting go of the need for approval is a process. The human brain, especially the amygdala, the fear center, was wired for belonging. For thousands of years, rejection meant you might be cast out of the tribe. It meant danger. So if you feel anxious when someone disapproves, that's normal. What changes with age is this: you stop letting that fear drive the bus. A 58-year-old man once told me, "I'm not afraid of being disliked anymore. I'm afraid of reaching the end without ever having lived honestly." That touched me deeply. Because when you stop chasing approval, you don't become cold or arrogant. You become steady and you shine in the most natural way. There's nothing left to prove. You don't need to be chosen. You simply are yourself, and to this universe that is already a priceless gift. Try something small after you watch this. When someone disagrees with you, or when you feel yourself performing to be liked, pause, take a breath, and ask, am I doing this out of love or out of fear of being rejected? If it's fear, return to your breath, to the rhythm of your own heart, and gently remind yourself, I am enough. I don't need to prove it to anyone. You know, real light doesn't strain to shine. It only needs to be freed from what's covering it. People are the same. When you stop straining to be loved, to be praised, to be called worthy, in that very soft moment, your light appears on its own. I saw that light in Martha's eyes when she sat quietly and then smiled. No more effort, no more acting, just herself, still and free. So if your life has grown quieter these days, please don't fear the quiet. See it as an old friend inviting you home. home to yourself, no permission required. You don't need approval to be lovable. You need your own acceptance. And when that happens, you realize peace was never far away. It's always been in your chest, waiting for you to stop asking permission to be who you are. When you stop seeking approval on the outside, you begin to hear the voice of your soul on the inside, and that voice has never judged you. It only says you are already enough. There's something else that starts to fall away when you stop chasing approval, the need to be special. I've met so many people in their 60s and 70s who still carry this quiet longing. I want to be different. I want to be remembered. There's nothing wrong with that. Humans want to leave a mark. But sometimes that very longing becomes a golden cage. Picture a garden full of flowers. Each one tries to grow taller than the rest, hoping to be noticed, to be called the most beautiful. Then the wind arrives, the rain comes, the sun rises, and all the flowers, big and small, release their fragrance together. No competing, no striving. That's when the garden truly comes alive. We're no different. When we stop comparing and simply live our own nature, life becomes quietly harmonious. I think of Robert, 71, a once successful entrepreneur. He told me, I spent my life trying to be special, someone others would admire. But now, sitting alone in the backyard, I just want to be as peaceful as the birds on the fence. He admitted that through his career, he never allowed himself a real day of rest, afraid that if he stopped being special, people would forget him. When his health declined, he discovered something else. No one was watching as closely as he thought. And in that realization, he felt relief for the first time in his life. I understand. When I was young, I believed my worth came from podiums, titles, applause. The longer I lived, the clearer it became. Greatness isn't in being recognized, it's in being at peace when no one's looking. If you're exhausted from always trying to seem better, deeper, more admirable, that's a sign you've drifted from your own truth and into a performance. Neuroscience offers an interesting note. The brain reacts to praise much like it does to a stimulant. It releases dopamine, giving us a high sense of meaning. But like any dose, it fades, and we want more. The more we crave being special, the deeper we fall into the addiction of being seen. That isn't self-respect, it's a subtle dependence of the ego. Once during a meditation group, an older woman sitting beside me said, I used to think I needed a grand mission. Now I just want to cook breakfast for my husband with all the love I've got. And that feels as sacred as any mission. I smiled. That's the heart of awakening. When you stop trying to be special, you become special in the most natural way. Not because you outshine anyone, but because you are wholly yourself without pretense. Alan Watts once said, "The meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. We don't have to be the biggest flower in the garden. We just need to bloom in our own way. And when you do, you discover that simplicity is what makes you radiant." Another miracle happens when you drop the need to be special. You begin to truly see other people. When the ego softens, the heart opens. You stop viewing others through the lens of comparison and start seeing them with compassion. You can smile at a stranger not to get anything back, but because in that moment you genuinely feel them as part of you. That to me is the highest form of love. Ask yourself, if I no longer needed admiration, if I had nothing to prove, how would I live? Maybe you'd sit on the porch with a cup of tea, call an old friend, or simply take a deep breath and smile. That isn't smallness, that's coming home. As we age, our bodies change, our social roles fade, and we face a deeper question. Who am I when those titles are gone? If you sit with that question long enough, something beautiful appears. You are not what you do. You are the one who notices it all. Quiet, enduring, and free. So, dear friend, if you feel less special than you once did, if the world doesn't call your name like it used to, don't be sad. It may be the sign that you're waking up. When you stop proving your worth, your true worth begins to blossom. When you stop trying to stand out, your natural light begins to shine. The sun doesn't need to declare it's the sun, it simply shines and the world is warmed. The less you try to stand out, the more radiant you become. And perhaps in the end, the most special thing a person can be is a peaceful soul. There's a subtle truth we often discover only after a few decades of living. We get used to pretending we're fine. Maybe you've had days when a storm rages inside, but when someone asks, "Are you okay?" you smile and say, "I'm fine." A polite smile, tired eyes, a simple phrase masking an ocean that won't quiet down. I've met hundreds of people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s like this. They don't come to learn something new. They come to breathe honestly for once. No need to be strong. No need to say, "Everything's great." A man named Henry, 66, a retired engineer, once told me through tears, "I've worn the happy mask for 40 years. Now, don't even know what happiness looks like." I sat quietly, then asked Henry, "If you didn't have to pretend to be cheerful today, what would you do?" He thought for a long time and said, "Maybe I'd just sit still and allow myself to be sad." You see, courage isn't always being strong. Sometimes it's the bravery to be tender and truthful. Society teaches us that positive is good and negative is bad, but emotions aren't moral. Sadness, anger, fear, they're messages from the soul reminding us we're alive. Psychology calls the habit of forcing positivity toxic positivity. It disconnects us from what's real, like putting a bandage over a bleeding wound. It looks neat on the outside, but inside it festers. Picture this. A child falls and cries. If you rush in and say, "Don't cry, be strong," the child might go quiet, but the fear remains. If you kneel down and say, "It's okay, cry, I'm right here," something amazing happens. The tears dissolve and peace returns. Emotions work the same way. When we allow them to exist, they soften. When we forbid them, they freeze into long-term pain. One afternoon at a nursing home where I volunteer, a 74-year-old woman named Linda told me, "All my life I was afraid people would see me as weak. When my husband died, I kept smiling and saying, 'I'm fine.' But at night, I wanted to scream into the emptiness." I held her hand and said, "Sometimes truth deserves more respect than happiness. You don't have to be okay to be loved." When Linda cried, her wrinkled, trembling face became strangely beautiful. That's the beauty of a human being who stops hiding their soul. So to you watching this, if you're tired today, don't force a smile just to keep up appearances. If you're sad, don't drown it out with cheerful music. Let your feelings breathe, speak, and live. Honesty is the deepest kind of happiness, not the noisy kind, but the calm that comes when you stop acting. People ask me, "Then, how do I recognize genuine happiness?" I usually smile and say, "True happiness doesn't make you tired. It isn't loud. It doesn't need proof. It's not a peak emotion, it's a quiet resting, like sitting with a warm cup of tea, hearing a soft breeze and realizing you don't need anything more." When you stop faking happy, others may be surprised. They're used to your always cheerful version. Don't be afraid. You're giving them a chance to meet the real you, and maybe they'll find the courage to do the same. One honest person inspires more than 1,000 moral lectures, because the light of truth never needs makeup, and that light is gentle. It isn't the glare of a forced smile at a party. It's the warm glow slipping through a window, touching a heart that has stopped pretending. I've watched many people in their 70s reclaim that freedom. No need to be always cheerful, always strong, always fine. They just need to be real. If you feel empty today, don't call it spiritual failure. It's the first step of awakening. When the layers of fake cheer fall away, what remains is your true presence, bare, simple, vividly alive. True spirituality. I often tell my students isn't being endlessly cheerful, it's being real. In the end, you don't need to be happier. You need to be more honest, and from there, peace blossoms. So if you're not okay today, know that it's okay. Sometimes it's the moment you stop pretending to be happy that your real life finally begins. There's another fear most of us meet, especially halfway through life: uncertainty. We were taught that safety lives in knowing who we are, what will happen, right versus wrong, the next step. We call that controlling our lives. But have you noticed? The need to know everything can be the very thing that steals our freedom. I worked with a man named Charles, 68, a lifelong engineer, precise down to the millimeter. Then he retired. His wife died. He came to me and said, "I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what to do when I wake up. Everything I was sure of suddenly feels meaningless." I looked at him and remembered myself at 50 when I lost my job, my reputation, and my first partner. I sat in that same fog and I knew the fear Charles was naming. We humans aren't great with ambiguity. The brain wants to sort everything: good, bad, right, wrong, us, them, yes, no. When those borders dissolve, it feels like free fall. And yet, that open space is the doorway to the most wonderful part of awakening. Imagine you're by the ocean at dawn. Mist blankets the water. The horizon is hidden. You don't know where the sun will rise, how the wind will blow, how strong the next wave will be. Then you let go of trying to control it and simply listen to the sea's rhythm. Peace arrives, quiet and surprising. When we stop stirring the muddy cup, the water clears on its own. Uncertainty isn't a scary void, it's a space where new life can enter. Psychology calls it tolerance for ambiguity. People who build this capacity tend to be less anxious, more creative, and more at ease. They don't force every question to have an immediate answer. They know life is an unfolding, not a problem set. A monastic friend of mine, 40 years on the cushion, once said, "I'm certain of only one thing, that I'll never know everything." Then he added, "When I accepted that, I felt more peaceful than ever." We used to think certainty equals safety. Strangely, certainty can become a shackle. Declare something ultimate truth and growth stops. I've seen many elders suffer not from lack of money or health, but because they can't accept not knowing anymore. Children live differently than they imagined. Society changes fast. Old beliefs don't quite fit, so they cling and become afraid. But when they loosen their grip, magic happens. A 72-year-old grandmother told me I was terrified of not knowing how to live in retirement. Now I see that not knowing made me curious again like a child, and that to me is the beginning of real life. As children, we didn't know much, and we were fully alive. We wondered, experimented, failed, laughed. That's life expressing itself. Then we grew up and were trained to know to be right, to stay safe. Somewhere in all that knowing, we misplaced the joy of discovery. The awakened person isn't the one who knows it all, but the one who accepts that everything can change. What's true today might not be true tomorrow. That doesn't make them anxious, it frees them. When you stop clenching your hands, are finally open to receive. To live without certainty, Alan Watts said, is to live as a child again with eyes wide open. When was the last time you were honestly amazed by something small? A flower opening after rain, a child's giggle, a stranger's kind glance. You can't schedule moments like that. They arrive when life leads and we stop trying to control. So if you're in a murky season, don't be afraid. Treat the unknown like a gift that hasn't been unwrapped. Life doesn't need you to understand it. It just needs you present. Real safety isn't in certainty, it's in steadiness, inside uncertainty. And when you learn that, you don't need answers anymore, because life itself becomes the answer. There's another stretch on the path that almost everyone walks, sometimes slowly, sometimes painfully, letting go of blame. Blame is a habit, a reflex of our defenses. When things go wrong, we look for a target. Parent, spouse, boss, government, fate. Or worse, we aim at ourselves. In a small group for people over 60, a woman named Evelyn, 64, said through tears, "I'm still angry with my father. He was so strict. I spent my life trying to prove my worth to him, and now he's gone, and I still can't forgive." I asked gently, "Do you think that anger has been steering your life all these years?" She wept harder. Sometimes we don't need others to keep hurting us. We keep doing it for them. Blame is a tether. We think we're holding on to justice, but really we're gripping pain. It's like clutching a hot coal, hoping the other person gets burned first. When you blame, you hand your power to someone else. He made me miserable. If that were true, you've given him the keys to your happiness. Forgiveness isn't easy, especially with fresh wounds. People tell me I can't forgive my ex for betraying me. Forgiveness is weak. I smile and say, forgiveness isn't pardoning them. It's setting yourself free. I once read research from Stanford. When you harbor resentment, your heart rate, blood pressure, and stress hormones spike. When you release it, the brain regions of safety and warmth light up like being held by a dear friend. In other words, forgiveness is intelligent biology. It isn't for them, it's healing your own nervous system. Tom, 73, told me I spent my life hating my ex-wife. She left me, but the hatred took more than she ever did. It took 20 years. I asked, if you could go back, what would you do differently? He stared into the distance. Maybe I'd thank her. Because when she left, I learned how to love not others first, but myself. I often tell my students, letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without trembling. When you stop blaming, you don't erase the past. You stop letting it define the present. Imagine holding a rope tied to a heavy boulder. You pull and strain and curse the rock for hurting your hands. Then, one day, you realize you don't have to pull. You can let go. The rock remains where it is, but you are free. When I was young, I blamed my parents for not understanding me, for not supporting my choices. I thought if they were different, I'd be happier. At 60, I see it differently. They loved me the only way they knew how. Their limits taught me compassion. I don't feel angry now. I feel grateful. Grateful that their imperfections taught me how to be kind. Blame blinds you to the lesson Alan Watts said. Every person who hurt you holds up a mirror to the fear of abandonment, to a bruised pride, to the belief I'm unlovable. Only when we face the mirror rather than shatter it do we start to see ourselves clearly. Life isn't a contest of who's right. If you live long enough, you see that no one truly wins the blame game. Even when you score a point, you forfeit a little piece. Ask yourself slowly, is the person I resent worth another day of my peace? If the answer is no, your freedom has already begun. Forgiveness isn't an event. It's peeling old armor layer by layer. Sometimes you'll forgive the same memory more than once. Each time it softens a bit, and your heart grows lighter, gentler, truer. If you feel ready, place a hand on your chest and whisper, I forgive not because they deserve it, but because I deserve peace. And as you do, you'll notice no one is hurting you anymore. It's just you and freedom. There's one more subtle trap on the spiritual path, one I've fallen into, and you may have too. It looks noble and wise, but it's really avoidant spiritual bypassing. For years, I believed I was above the everyday, more awake than those around me. I meditated for hours, read a small library of philosophy, spoke of unconditional love, enlightenment, letting go. But when a friend said something I didn't like, I still bristled. When my son went against my wishes, I still got angry. I just gave it a prettier name: low energy. Funny, isn't it? We can know everything about awakening and still not live it. Nancy, 59, came to me after her husband died. I know I should let go. Everything is impermanent. I meditate, I chant, I do all the practices, but inside I still hurt so much. I feel like a spiritual failure. I told her slowly, Nancy, grief isn't a failure of spirituality, it is spirituality. She cried not from weakness, but from truth finally being allowed. Spiritual bypassing is using beliefs and practices to avoid real feelings. Saying everything is perfect to dodge pain. Saying I've let it go while shaking when the subject comes up. Saying I'm just observing emotions when really we're hiding. Real spirituality doesn't avoid the dark. It holds it, warms it, and understands that it belongs to the light. Over 3 decades, I've seen 2 common groups at this crossroads. Those who've suffered so long they seek refuge in spirituality, and those with many achievements who feel empty and look to meditation for meaning. Both are sincere, but sometimes meditation prayer or high teachings become a shield, not to open the heart, but to protect it from hurt. I once told Harold, 61, a former Marine, "You don't need to meditate to become a better man. You need to sit still long enough to feel what you've been running from." When he cried for the first time in 40 years, big hands trembling in his lap, I knew that was real meditation. Not some lofty bliss, but a return to this body, this human being, light and shadow together. You may hear I only want positive energy. I avoid negativity. But when we run from pain, we feed it. Fear, anger, jealousy, hurt, repressed. They don't disappear. They lie in wait. Like a child left alone, not needing silence, but an embrace. Spirituality isn't escaping our humanity. It's becoming fully human, tender, and whole. When we live honestly, the body changes too. People tell me that admitting sadness makes them feel lighter. When they stop forcing nobility, their breath deepens. The body always knows the truth and relaxes when we stop pretending. A Tibetan teacher once told me enlightenment isn't on the mountain, it's in how you meet your anger when someone wounds you. He smiled. If you can see the sacredness inside that anger, you've begun to awaken. How do I stop bypassing? People ask. I won't hand you a rule book. I'll invite you to listen to your body and feelings more often. When you're angry, don't scold yourself. I shouldn't be mad. I'm not spiritual enough. Place a hand on your heart and ask, what is this anger trying to tell me? When you're sad, don't rush to raise your vibration. Sit, breathe, and whisper, I allow this sadness to be here. I still love myself when I'm sad. That is high practice, not flying above pain, but walking through it kindly. When we stop running and hiding, when we dare to feel what we feared, a very quiet peace arrives, not from up there, but from within this body and this beating heart. Awakening doesn't pull you out of life, it lets you touch life more deeply. Not staying dry by avoiding the river, but learning to swim with your eyes open. In the end, spirituality isn't escaping the human in you. It's embracing it and discovering in every breath, every tear, every smile, God is right here with you. One more piece: no one likes to talk about isolation. Awakening can feel lonely, not because it's wrong, but because it unmasks what connection really is. When I left academia to devote myself to the inner life, I expected instant peace. Instead, I felt lost. Old friends didn't quite understand. Conversations that once thrilled me went hollow. Even in a crowd, I felt like I was speaking a different language. Michael, 62, told me. After I started meditating and slowing down, friends called me strange. They said I wasn't fun anymore. Truth is, I just lost interest in empty talk. He paused. Sometimes I wonder, is awakening the same as being alone, a hold in what I'd learned through my own loneliness? No, Michael. Awakening doesn't make us lonely. It removes the illusions we mistook for connection. Most relationships are built on roles. I'm the nice one, the wise one, the dependable one. When we take off those masks, some relationships fall away. Don't be afraid. As the familiar leaves, space opens for what's real. Margaret. An older woman who came to my class in Seattle said, I used to have so many friends, but since I've changed, they don't visit. I feel like I live in a different world. What's that world like? I asked. She thought and said, quiet. Sometimes sad, but clear. I sense myself in the small things around me in ways I never did. I smiled. Loneliness isn't your enemy. It's the stillness that teaches you to hear your soul. Real connection isn't about how many people are around you, but how present you are. One honest conversation can be deeper than 1,000 polite chats. One hug that understands your silence can heal more than all the right words. Neuroscience tells us that true connection releases oxytocin, the hormone of trust and warmth. Here's the lovely part. It doesn't only rise with other people. It also rises when you connect with yourself. Sit alone, breathe and feel, I'm here. I'm okay. In that moment, you're not alone, even if no one's there. Awakening moves us from false connection to true connection. At first, you may lose the people who only knew your social mask. Slowly, you begin to attract kindred spirits, people who don't need you to be cheerful, strong, or advanced. They just need you real. You might sit together and say nothing and still feel love moving between you. Paul 70 once told me, "After years of loneliness, I realized I was never truly alone. When I sat quietly, I could feel my late wife, the trees, the sky, the life around me. I realized I belong here." That's when isolation dissolves. Not because someone showed up, but because your heart opened to everything. Maybe you've felt it, a morning walk. Birdsong sunlight through leaves and a warmth you can't quite name. That's the deep connection true spirituality brings. Not blind conformity, but a knowing that you and the universe were never separate. So if you feel lonely, if you don't seem to fit anywhere, don't assume something is wrong. It might be a sign you're moving into a deeper layer of love, a love without roles or performances, a love that doesn't require being understood, only your presence honest, whole, and enough. You realize that when the masks fall away, what remains between us is always love. That, dear friend, is the quiet fruit of awakening. When you stop hunting for connection out there, you discover you were never truly alone. And now, after walking these steps, releasing the hunt for approval, the need to be special, the performance of happiness, the demand for certainty, the habit of blame, the spiritual detours, and the ache of isolation, we enter the stillest part of the path coming home. Sometimes you don't know you've wandered until one day everything looks the same, but your heart feels empty. In that emptiness, truth calls you back, not back to the past or to someone else, but to yourself, to the quiet, peaceful, loving place that never left you, just forgot. One autumn afternoon, Laura 70 told me with a trembling voice, "I've searched my whole life. Work, religion, retreats, even love. Now I see the thing I wanted never left me." I smiled. I understood. Awakening isn't finding something new, it's remembering what was never lost. As you shed what's false, life becomes unbelievably simple. No need for titles, for praise, for being right, for understanding everything. Just life, like breath, like light, like wind. You realize I don't have to become anyone. I only need to be. Neuroscience notes that when we rest in acceptance fully, allowing the present, the brain's stress centers quiet. We shift into networks of connection where peace and gratitude arise naturally. We are, in a sense, wired to return. Stillness isn't foreign, it's the mind's home. Awakening rarely explodes like fireworks. It comes softly, like water through stone, like dawn through old curtains, like a deep breath after a long road. And when you stop trying to wake up, you finally wake up. At the end of the path, you don't become superhuman. You become fully human. You still wash dishes, shop for groceries, laugh, cry, miss someone. But you are present in each small thing. No need to keep your vibration high, no need to avoid negative people. Just live open-hearted, steady-minded, trusting that even if I don't know tomorrow, life is unfolding as it should. That is real freedom. Not freedom to do everything you want, but freedom from everything that once bound your heart. You're not afraid of being misunderstood, not hungry for praise, not terrified of loss, because you've learned that nothing real can be taken from you. What's true was never at risk. Try this right now if you can. Sit still, breathe deep, feel the pulse in your chest. Don't chase a state. No special technique needed. Just sit and know you're here. In that moment, you stop being a seeker and become someone who is found. Awakening is not about becoming someone new. It's about no longer pretending to be someone else. So if you feel yourself slowly letting go, know that it isn't loss, it's return. And on that homeward road, every tear, every sigh, every smile is a footprint of light. When you release what isn't true, what remains is love. Not the love you chase, but the love you already are. And that, my friend, is freedom.